Everybody. Just thought I'd give you a quick example of the ins and outs of FreeMarker. FreeMarker is an HTML synthesizer that works with templates and variables. Typically, what you want to do is import a couple or four of these classes from the FreeMarker API, and then you want to establish the HTML and maybe a sample template. Here we have a name of a class, and then the field that's in the class. So when we look at something like the example object that's being passed in, we would expect to see it have some fields associated with it. When we take a look at the example I've worked up, you can see the fields include the name and the developer. Even though the member variables are private, there's getters for the things that are going to be used inside of the template. So when you go into this template example, you'll see the name and you'll see the developer. And as a result, when you go through and you do the initialization, first thing you want to do is make a configuration. You only do that once. And then you're going to describe where the templates get loaded from. And then you're going to set your default settings for things like whether or not you're using the Unicode 8-bit standard. And then you're going to process your template. But the first thing you need to do is you need to put in the values for the variables. And so here we have something called systems, where we have the name and the developer. And then what we'll do is we'll use this template, which is a static string, throw it into a string reader along with our configuration, and that'll create our little example. Then what we do is we create an output stream writer out of the system.out so that we can proceed to write the template after processing to the console, and then we close the console. And now when we run, we're able to see Android from Google, iOS states from Apple. These are essentially just a list of items that are available, all because they were added as values to the system map. And here's the map with the string and the object. And so when you see the list item, you'll see the system name from system developer. And all of that gets thrown into something called systems. So at this point, what we want to do is try and run through a more formal presentation. And so what I have here is a presentation on FreeMarker. And what we can show in FreeMarker is that we can generate HTML either through a servlet, that is dynamically, as an alternative to Java server pages, or we can generate it in a batch mode, which is what I am more likely to do, because I'll be running the HTML generator offline as part of some extended data mining operation. So what we end up doing is coming up with a way to essentially generate HTML without Java server pages and without embedding HTML in servlets. Instead, what we're doing is we're creating a template system. So now what we have is this powerful, so-called powerful template language. Me personally, I'm not as used to FreeMarker as I am to other means of generating HTML, which include Java server pages. But this is an interesting way to go, and it's a nice alternative. So here's an example where we have a person, and their name is John Smith, and then we have a list of phone numbers, and now we're going to set the phone numbers for John Smith, and then we create our hash map and we put the person into the hash map. And then for the generation part, what we do is we change our, this is the output encoding over in here, the ISO encoding. We load up our template, and then what we can do is proceed to output the template by embedding it into our class and then writing out the process of the template to some writer. That's a little bit different than what I did. I just put the template in with the class as a static variable. Some people don't like to do that because they want to separate the process data from the actual class itself, but I find that it makes it more difficult to load these things. So now you have a template example where you say person dot and then the member name, and then the getter is used in order to be able to get the name. Similarly for the ID, and then for the list, we can go to the person and get the phone numbers, and then for the phone numbers we can have an iterator in there. So now what we have is more or less a stupid programming language that is capable of doing iteration. So I look at something like this and I think, well, why didn't I just use Java server pages, which could easily embed a little bit of Java that would allow me to do this kind of synthesis of a list out to HTML. Or even better, I could use my HTML utils in order to be able to generate the strings that are used to create lists from arrays. So now we've got this whole sort of language embedded inside of another language, and the two languages are completely different. Now we're using dollar signs for our variables. We're finding mechanisms to increase the complexity of our system and its interdependence on jar files. So some people really like this sort of thing. I, for one, find it's much too fragile, much too dependent on somebody else's framework. And so I tend not to use these types of template languages, but other people like them, so it's good to know a little bit about them so that you can see what's going on. But it's the moral equivalent of embedding XML or HTML inside of your Java program, neither of which is particularly good practice. The idea that you can have very complex variable assignments and that you can then proceed to create syntax errors which will now only be detected at runtime further undermines the argument for using a template language. And what that means is very similar to what happens with Java server pages. The Java server pages will generate syntax errors at visitation time for your web server. This is absolutely the wrong time to have a syntax error, because then what happens is your customer just sees syntax errors spitting up all over their web browser. And it also makes unit testing and generalized GUI testing much more difficult. So one good thing about this type of template language is you don't need a web server in order to generate the HTML, but there's other ways to generate HTML without some sort of a template language, especially for a Java programmer who knows what they're doing. So here's another mechanism for embedding a programming mechanism inside of an HTML document that really wasn't meant for it. So now we've got a stupid programming language trying to do something like a loop. Well, why would you want to do that if you're a Java programmer? This doesn't look at all like Java to me. But some people like it, so try not to say too many disparaging things about it. And another thing people often said about Java is it has no macros. But now, with this template language, you can have macros. Well, macros allow you to embed even more programming aspects into your process data. And so now you've got a mechanism that can make your template language even more complex. And eventually what will happen is you'll have a full-blown programming language in your template language. And someone might well ask, well, what do you need that for? So now you've got these imports. What happens if it can't find certain templates in certain places because refactoring doesn't work inside of your template language? Well, then your code will break. So now you have another source of fragility. And here comes another include. Now you can include headers, which can be included in each template language. That's just going to slow down everything because now you can have nested includes. And the includes can include other includes, which can in turn call other includes, and by the time you're done, you don't know what's including what anymore. You could even have circular includes, and that could be a real mess. It is the case that you can embed other languages in the template language. For example, you could embed XML into your template language, as well as HTML and the template language itself with all of its incumbent variables. And if you do that, I don't know who's going to be able to debug and understand your code. So here's what we've got now, a way to create some HTML from a list of holdings. And we'll get the fidelity template from a static string, which contains a mixture of HTML and freemarker variables. And we put these things into our little hash map, and then we proceed to do the process of the output stream, and that will allow us to output the results to our console. When we look at the template itself, we can see that there are variables like the date. Let's see if there's any other variables in here. There's an end of a # list, so that'll go into the template system. You can kind of see how these elements are not necessarily elements you might be familiar with as a Java programmer. And then what we do is we use a string reader, get the static fidelity template and the configuration, which is also static, and then we can put that into making our new template. Here's the rest of it. So now we can see holding dot, this is the price to earnings ratio divided by the growth. We have the Sharpe ratios and the and ticker name, and you can see now here's the ticker name, and here's the portfolio name, and all of these things, the Sharpe ratios, are available to us in the table data. This could just as easily have been created with a Java server page, but maybe the attraction here is you've got a mechanism that allows you to separate out the variables. And now you can put those variables back in, assuming that they don't change their names and that refactoring doesn't break everything. And so that's what we have with FreeMarker. And hope you like my little presentation. Thank you for your time.